When the lawyer said everything goes to your sister, I didn't flinch. I had flinched 1,000 times before. This time I just folded my hands in my lap and watched her smile. Sloane, my older sister by 3 years, sat 2 seats down in a black sheath dress that cost more than my mortgage. Her blonde hair was styled into soft waves, her nails a muted rose, her expression composed, but just smug enough for me to see the celebration underneath. We were seated in a dark-paneled conference room on the 28th floor of Denton and Ward, the family's longtime estate firm. It smelled like leather and old decisions. Mr. Halpern, the attorney, cleared his throat delicately as he continued reading my father's will. The properties in Bainbridge, Westport, and Aspen, as well as all holdings of Quinstrat Holdings, including asset subsidiaries and the executive trust, are hereby transferred in full to Sloane Quinn Rivers. He glanced up, perhaps to see if I'd speak. I didn't. Sloane did. That's generous, she said softly, more to herself than to anyone else. I studied her face, not out of jealousy. I'd stopped expecting fairness from our father years ago. Richard Quinn believed in legacy, and to him, Sloane was the polished stone he'd carved to carry it. Married to a real estate developer, mother of 2, Ivy League graduate board chair of the Quinn Foundation, the kind of daughter who fit into newspaper announcements. I, on the other hand, had always been the splinter in his system. A marine biologist, divorced, living alone in a 2-bedroom cottage near the shore. I'd left his world of boardrooms and strategy dinners, and that to him was betrayal. Mr. Halpern cleared his throat again. To Ms. Emery Quinn, he said my name small between the echoes of glass and silence, a box of personal effects from her late mother, including photo albums, handwritten journals, and select jewelry pieces. Sloane exhaled a soft puff of breath that barely contained amusement. She turned her head slightly, just enough to speak without looking directly at me. I always thought Mom's pearls would suit you. Something simple for someone grounded. I didn't answer. I just reached for my bag, stood and smoothed the skirt of my navy dress. Are we finished here, Mr. Halpern? I asked. He nodded quickly. Yes, Ms. Quinn. As I walked toward the door, I heard Sloane again, her voice syrupy sweet. Emery, if you ever need anything Quinstrat's expanding, we might have a spot for you. Something field-based. That made me stop just for a second. I turned to her and offered a small smile. Thank you, Sloane. But I think I'm where I need to be. Outside, the air tasted like late autumn. Salt and pine and the last edge of gold in the leaves. My mother used to say this was her favorite time of year when the old things fall and the ground makes room for something else. I didn't drive straight home. I took the long way past the shoreline, past the old lighthouse. And when I finally walked through the door of my cottage, I went straight to the bottom drawer of my desk. The envelope was still there. The one my mother gave me 2 years ago, her hands trembling. Don't open this until your father is gone, she had whispered. Now he was. And I was ready. The envelope was thick, sealed with a strip of aging tape and slightly yellowed at the edges. My name was written across it in my mother's handwriting firm, elegant, deliberate. Emery. Just that. No date, no explanation. She'd handed it to me one rainy afternoon 2 years ago, sitting on the porch of this same house. Her hands had trembled more than usual. The cancer was already working quietly then, like so many things in our family did. Don't open this until your father is gone. She'd said, her fingers pressing the envelope into mine like it was something sacred. Promise me. I had. And today was the first day that promise no longer held. I opened the envelope, slowly peeling the tape back as if rushing it might break something inside. At the top was a letter written in blue ink on ivory paper. My mother's voice came back to me with every line steady, warm, a little sad. My dearest Emery, if you're reading this, your father is gone, and I'm no longer there to say the things I should have said louder sooner. Your father built Quinstrat with stone and steel, but he never saw the ocean. Not really. He never saw you. My throat tightened. I sat down on the edge of the couch, the letter trembling slightly in my hands. While he chased markets, I followed your work quietly at first. I watched you care for coastlines, speak at conferences, build something that mattered. And while he mocked your career choices over dinner, I began investing. Under the letter were folders, thick ones, documents, stock certificates, investment summaries, holdings in over a dozen sustainable tech companies, some now valued in the hundreds of millions, all legally transferred to my name over the course of nearly 2 decades, through silent moves, through shell accounts he never questioned. This is yours. Every share, every dollar. He can't touch it. Neither can Sloan. I blinked, scanning lines of legal language all signed notarized. My name, again and again, beneath initials I didn't recognize her lawyers, her planners, her allies. She'd built a fortress under his nose. Do with it what I couldn't. Be louder than I was allowed to be. Build something better and let no one make you feel small again. I closed the folder and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The walls of my home seemed to shift, expand, even. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. A new message from Sloan. Let's have dinner. We should talk about what's next for the family and for you. I stared at the screen for a moment, then slowly typed back. Come by tomorrow morning. I have something to show you. I didn't sleep much that night. I stayed up reading, calculating, remembering. Not just what my father had taken from me, but what my mother had been quietly giving all along. And I wondered, what would Sloan do when she saw it? Sloan arrived at exactly 10:00 a.m., sharp as always. I watched from the front window as she stepped out of a silver Mercedes heels, clicking against the stone walkway, her black coat cinched perfectly at the waist. She paused briefly at the garden gate, eyes scanning the modest cottage like it offended her. She knocked once. I opened the door before she could knock again. Emery, she said with that curated warmth in her voice. You look rested. I nodded. Come in. She walked past me, her perfume trailing behind a familiar blend of expensive restraint. Inside, she glanced at the furniture, the bookshelves, the unpolished wood floors. I saw her eyes flick toward the old photographs on the mantel. She said nothing, but her mouth tightened ever so slightly. I led her to the dining room where the documents were spread out neatly across the table. I'd spent the morning organizing them by date, by holding by region. Sloane's heels stopped short at the threshold. What's all this? She asked, cautious now. Something Mom wanted you to see. She approached the table slowly. Her manicured hand hovered over the first folder, then touched it lightly. I watched her scan the title, then the numbers. Her eyes narrowed. These are investments, she said, flipping a page. Then another, renewable tech, ocean conservation. What is this, Emery, my inheritance? She looked up sharply. Excuse me, I didn't repeat it. I just stepped back and let her keep reading. Within minutes, her posture shifted. She stopped flipping and started reading. Her eyes darted from figure to figure, page to page. Her fingers trembled slightly enough for me to see. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. This can't be real, she said. Mom didn't. She was just a housewife I finished for her. She didn't answer. She knew what she was doing, I said softly. For 20 years. Sloane's face flushed. She picked up one of the folders and stared at the notarized signature. This is in your name, she said. All of it. She turned slowly, her jaw tight. Dad never mentioned anything like this. He wouldn't have allowed it. I nodded. That's why she never told him. Silence. A long, heavy stretch of it. When she finally spoke again, her voice had lost its polish. So what, now, she asked. You want to trade seats? Be the one holding the family name now? I shook my head. I don't want your seat, Sloan. I want my own table. She stared at me, eyes wide, not angry, not afraid, just disoriented. Like she'd walked into a room where the walls had quietly moved overnight. By noon the next day, the tremors had already begun. A headline blinked across my phone screen as I sipped coffee on the porch. Sustainable Shadow Empire tied to late Richard Quinn's Widow Shakes investment world. I hadn't spoken to the press. I hadn't posted a thing. But money always knows where to look, and when it moves, people follow. By afternoon, Quinstrat Holdings had dropped nearly 17%, not from scandal, from doubt. Doubt about leadership, doubt about vision, doubt about Sloan. The calls started early the following morning. Sarah Reyes, my mother's attorney, called first. Calm, precise. "Your mother anticipated this," she said. "We're ready." I didn't ask how she knew which "this" I meant. The leak, the drop, the public reversal. There were too many options. She assumed, Sarah continued, that once your father was gone and the board learned the scope of Margot's investments, they'd panic. She left us prepared to respond legally and financially. "She always planned in silence," I said. "Yes," Sarah replied. But she played the long game. By midweek, Sloan had gone quiet. I hadn't heard from her since the morning she left my house, clutching a folder like a shield she didn't know how to use. Instead, I got a message from my cousin Jake, someone I hadn't seen since Thanksgiving 5 years ago. "Hey, Emery. Congrats, I guess. If you ever need help managing that portfolio, let's talk." And then another. "It's unfair, you know. Dad built Quinstrat for the family, not for Mom to undercut it from the grave." That one came from Uncle Bennett, always loyal to Richard, always skeptical of environmental idealism. I didn't respond to either. Instead, I opened a new tab on my laptop and pulled up a grant application from Pacific Blue Labs, a nonprofit my mother had backed anonymously for years. They were developing a biodegradable mesh to collect microplastics without harming plankton ecosystems. I read through their latest field reports, their funding gaps, their projections, and I thought, this is what legacy should look like. Quiet, tangible, unapologetically useful. That afternoon, the board of Quinstrat convened for an emergency meeting. I wasn't there, of course, but I heard later from Sarah from Whispers Online that several key investors had demanded a vote of confidence. Not in the company. In Sloan. The same board my father once chaired was now questioning the daughter he'd groomed to replace him. Not because of me, not because of revenge, but because they'd finally seen something better and realized it had been there all along in the shadow of the empire they thought was eternal. The first real crack didn't come from the market. It came from her daughter. I heard about it from a former Quinstrat assistant who had quietly slipped me a message, someone whose name I only vaguely remembered from Christmas cards. "They say she left the board meeting early," the message read. Mira asked her why people online were calling her a fraud. Mira was 9. Bright, sensitive, the kind of child who listens when you think she's not. Sloan didn't respond to my calls. Not that I tried often. Once, maybe twice. No answer, no voicemail. But a few days later, a package arrived at my door, unmarked, wrapped in simple brown paper. Inside was a manila folder stamped "Confidential" and a note. "If you really want to clean up the ocean, you should probably see what Quinstrat's been dumping for years. No signature, just a trail." It led to internal reports, years of environmental negligence buried in quarterly language, offshore lobbying, paper-thin compliance, and Sloan's name on half the memos. Not as author, as recipient. She had known, not all of it maybe, but enough. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the documents fanned out beside my laptop, the light low, the silence steady. Outside, the wind rattled the glass, and I imagined my mother in this same chair poring over legal codes, figuring out how to protect something no one thought worth defending. My phone buzzed. Sloan. A text short I messed this up. Everything. Then a minute later, "Can we talk?" I stared at the screen. Not out of anger. Just caution. What version of my sister would walk through my door this time? The executive? The daughter? The girl who once took my lunchbox and threw it in the lake behind our summer home, or someone else, someone in between? The next morning, she was there again. Same car, no heels this time. Hair tied back, face bare. She looked smaller, like someone trying not to be noticed. "I spoke to the board," she said, standing on my porch. "They want options. They want an exit." I didn't say anything. "They're thinking of dismantling parts of Quinstrat," she added. "But some are suggesting a merger with Mom's companies." That made me look up. Her voice cracked a little. "They think your holdings might be the only way to save what's left." I studied her carefully. Not out of spite, but because for the first time I didn't know what she would do next. Sloan came back 2 days later. This time, she didn't wait to be invited inside. She stepped over the threshold like someone carrying fire. "They're calling an emergency session," she said. "Tomorrow." I set down my mug. "For what investor flight? Sustainability backlash. They're reviewing the CEO position." Her mouth pressed flat. "Mine." I nodded slowly. "They should be." Her eyes narrowed. "You think this is justice?" "No," I said. "It's overdue." She dropped a stack of printed emails on the table. I didn't need to read them. The logos on the headers were enough: Blackbridge Capital, Norwind, Caris Equity. All major investors. All pulling out. "They're afraid," she said. "They should be," I replied. "You sent them impact reports. On Quinstrat. On Dad." "I didn't write those reports. I just made sure the right people read them." Sloane's jaw clenched. "You're dismantling everything he built." "No," I said. "He dismantled it when he ignored the future." She sat down hard. For the first time, she didn't look like someone in control. She looked like someone trying to find the floor beneath her. "I was 12 when Dad told me I'd run the company," she said, staring at her hands. "He said I had to be sharper than the boys. Colder, too." I waited. I thought if I kept doing what he said, I'd stay safe. "You weren't safe," I said. "You were obedient." She didn't deny it. The room held a kind of stillness I hadn't felt in years. Then she looked up. "We could combine them. Your company's Mom's holdings. My infrastructure. We could turn Quinstrat into something else." I shook my head. "That's not what Mom wanted." "She wanted change. She wanted clarity," I said. "And you're only seeing clearly now that your seat is on fire." Sloane flinched, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw the child she had been. Not the one with the lead in the school play, or the one Dad paraded through board meetings. The one who used to sleep in my bed during thunderstorms because I was the only one who didn't tell her to stop crying. "Don't do this to me," she whispered. "I'm not doing it to you," I said. "You just finally can't stop it." The following morning, the headline hit: "Quinstrat Board removes Sloane Quinn Rivers as CEO amid investor exodus." I read it in silence, then closed the article. Outside, the wind picked up early winter in the air now. Not yet bitter, but sharp. I didn't text her. I didn't gloat. I just opened my inbox, clicked on the draft I'd been refining for weeks, and hit send. To Pacific Blue Consortium Board Subject Project Margot. Full launch proposal, let's begin. 3 weeks after the board removed Sloane, Sarah Reyes showed up at my office with a slim, white envelope. She left one more letter, Sarah said, placing it gently on my desk. "Your mother asked me to hold it until a certain condition was met." I looked at her. "What condition?" Sarah gave a faint smile. She believed Sloane might change. I waited until the office emptied before I opened it. The handwriting was the same, calm, looping familiar. "My darling Emery. If you're reading this, then something has shifted. Maybe not in Sloane's actions, but in her eyes. If she has faltered, stumbled, or softened even briefly, I want you to consider this." I paused, the edge of the paper warm beneath my fingers. "Your sister was raised in your father's world. She was built to obey, to impress, to win. But she wasn't shown how to feel safe in her own skin. I know she hurt you. I know she made it easier for him to ignore you. But that wasn't strength. That was fear with better posture." The words landed quietly. No drama, no plea. Just a mother saying what she had seen finally without blinking. "I've created a separate fund. It's small compared to the rest, but its purpose is clear education outreach and environmental literacy. If and only if you believe she is ready, I want you to let her lead it. Not because she deserves forgiveness, but because sometimes the most radical thing we can do is offer someone a chance to be better." There was no signature at the bottom, only a final line. "She is your sister Emery. She may not always have been, but she might yet become." I folded the letter slowly and slipped it back into the envelope. Outside, the ocean was stirring gray-blue under the pale sun. I thought about all the ways people try to rewrite the story of who they are, and how often they wait for someone else to start the sentence for them. That evening, I sent a message. "Dinner Thursday night. Just us. Bring nothing. No promise, no offer. Just the door opened barely. but opened nonetheless. On what would have been my mother's 70th birthday, we planted a tree in the garden she once tended. It was Sloane's idea. She showed up with a small magnolia roots wrapped in burlap and a pair of gloves I hadn't expected her to own. We didn't say much, just Doug settled the roots and pressed the earth back in place. The air smelled like damp soil and salt, like something honest. Afterward, we sat on the back steps watching the breeze pull through the leaves. Sloane sipped tea. Her hands were dirty and she didn't seem to mind. She used to talk about ecosystems, she said quietly. Tried to explain balance to me once. I didn't get it. I just wanted to go back inside. I smiled but didn't respond. The silence wasn't uncomfortable now. It felt earned. In the months that followed, Sloane threw herself into the education fund. She met with teachers, scientists, community leaders. She listened, asked questions. Sometimes too many. There were stumbles, missteps. One event went over budget. Another had to be canceled due to poor planning. But she kept showing up. One afternoon, I visited a classroom where she was teaching kids about marine debris. Her sleeves were rolled up. Her shoes were off. She laughed at a question she didn't know how to answer. It was strange seeing her like that, and oddly familiar. Back in my office, I hung a new photograph on the wall, right beside the one of Mom in her garden. This one showed Sloane kneeling beside a group of third graders pointing to a map of the Pacific, her eyes bright. Not the CEO, not the heir. Just a woman trying again. My phone buzzed, a message from her. The kids want to build their own cleanup model. You in? I stared at it for a moment, then typed back, count me in. Because in the end, it wasn't about who got what. It was about who knew how to plant something that could grow. You don't have to explain. Just leave a single dot if you've ever been there.